as we get into this morning update or this morning live, we had a short this morning just to kind of put us on par so we could see the inner workings. So if you didn't go watch that, make sure, even if you want to take a look at it after the live, heck, if you want to take 60 seconds now, I'm not gonna get mad. But I appreciate everybody tuning in. It means a lot to have the dedication, the support. I'm gonna close this just because it's pretty bright right there. But I do appreciate you guys tuning in. I know it's Saturday morning. It's not exactly the most thrilling market unless you're looking at it for opportunity. And if XRP loses, there's two areas that are the most concerning. That $1.98 to 202 is a concerning area if it's lost. But there's also one over the top where we could start to look at and say, okay, well, we've been bearish. Is there any kind of way that XRP can avoid this next melee? And that would be in real time. We have to continue to move it up around $2.21. You want to get over the top of that if you want to avoid this next layer. If not, 202 is pretty solid target here as far as the pattern breakout back test. Say if you fall below 201 now. And if that were to fall down, then you're going to start falling towards that FVG at $1.50. It could work you into a weird momentous move that if you break this down into the apex of the move, this takes you out all the way until September of 25 in that area. But I think it might, let's see. Just want to make sure that this is, I'm going to have to go into a higher time frame just because of how far this goes out. I want to see the exact, yeah, September. So that's accurate. September of 25. That's the apex point. And that's going to be the real, you know, the coup de grace here. If it does come down, that would be where we'd have to have a breakout one way or the other. And then obviously if it didn't break out, if it had to have that big of a retest, that's how you would know that the pattern's resetting. And things are going to get pretty interesting. We have that 97-cent area just below there is another gap. There's a few of them down below. But they don't fill 100% of the time, so you're going to leave about 5 to 6% of them. So it's not uncommon to have them left below. But there are some that seem to be the supporting structures that you would think would fill in some of these gap areas. I have a very fond belief that Bitcoin's really trying to fill that CME gap on the Chicago Mercantile Exchange, just kind of dropping it slowly. You know, retail gets excited every time they see it go up, so they can at least get a little bit more topside liquidity to help drive the price down. And then you do get short coverings as well. So you get, you know, a price drop or a price rise, and then all of a sudden, you know, they're either adding or liquidating, and you do get these coverings that happen. It's not quite similar to the call and put options in the stock market, but, you know, there are similarities that play when you play the futures, especially with some of these ETFs. So we'll have a lot to look at. I have a nice little list for us as well. I got to pull it out of my email that I want to go over. It's got the top 100 holders of Bitcoin. But this is from June, from Hold 15 Capital put this out. And this is from June 16, 2025. So Hold 15, HODL 15 Capital. They did the time to put this out. So I wanted to make sure to keep that little part in there so that you could see who put this out. I didn't cut it off, just so if you're looking, you can take a look and try to find them. HODL 15 Capital. I feel like you should give a little bit of credit when somebody puts the work in, because now I didn't have to do this. Somebody else did. So we'll go over this, but you'll see just how many holders of Bitcoin are actually within the top so many. It's quite alarming when you start to add it up over the top 100. So we'll take a look at that. We'll take a look at that as well. But this accounts for 830,000 Bitcoin. But this is like the this is more like the financial sector. So we're not talking about like the individual. We're talking about corporations. Let me rephrase that. We're talking about like the corporations, not like me and you, retail. You know, so that's definitely something that's pretty cool to look at. So we'll look at it together. Make sure to hit that like button if you are watching. If you are watching and you're not subscribed, make sure to subscribe. We're over 44,600 right now. I know we're teetering on 44,700, but it's literally on it exactly at 44,700. So I don't talk about the next layer until we get a few, because people follow all the time. So we're right at 44,700 on the nose. So I appreciate that. Let me go over a few of the comments, and then I really want to get into these charts and talk about this. Today, back to the power of positivity. Yesterday, I let out a few funnies, but today it's just back to the normal flow, the normal energy, not the rambunctious, just positivity over negativity, the all-inclusive, the helpful hand, that kind of things. Because at the end of the day, if we're being, you know, it's easy to go off topic, but if I'm not being like, let's just say overall inviting to everybody, a lot are going to miss it. And it might even put some people off. So we're going to have that inviting feeling instead of the you do what you do or get the hell out kind of feel. You know what I'm saying? So this is all inclusive. So it's my job to make sure that I stay even keel so that we can have as many people as possible that have the right information and that can get ahead on this next part, especially if we do drop. The last thing I want to do is kick people out of here because they're like, oh, I don't like his personality. My personality is what it is, but I'm not going to have that passive aggressive feel. I'd rather have the, let's just say the all-inclusive. So, good morning. 11:20 a.m. Eastern Standard Time on this Saturday, June 21st, 2025. I'm XRP Future Millionaire, and I reside in the great state of Michigan. So, Poppy Lou, welcome in, and thanks for being in Tom's Army for your first month with the emoji badge of me being abducted by aliens. Much appreciated. James Dula, good morning, and thanks for being in Tom's Army for over 3 months with the XRP Meteor. Good morning from Tom's backyard. Waiting for these cherry trees to grow so I can upgrade from my box to a tree house. Not a bad idea. Not a bad idea. It's a shame that you're in the backyard, because if you're in the front yard, there's a few maple trees that you could certainly make a fort in. But I'm glad to see you in here this morning. Mark Casson, welcome in, and thanks for being in Tom's Army for over 1 year with the I Told You So badge. Along with, let's see, Aaron, welcome in. Wales, Josie Wales, welcome in, and thanks for being in Tom's Army for over 1 year with the I Told You So badge as well. Joseph Euler and Aaron Reynolds, good morning, and thanks for being in Tom's Army for over 3 months now with the XRP Meteor. Love seeing all of you that continue to show up even on the weekend. I think the weekend sometimes is the hardest time for a lot to pay attention because the ETFs are closed. We're doing our own thing, but a lot of weird stuff happens on the weekend. It never ceases to amaze me, some of the links they pull on the weekend. Louisville, good morning, and thanks for being in Tom's Army for over 2 years with the XRP 589 Moon badge. Much appreciation for that. As for all of you, I really do appreciate everybody who's in Tom's Army. I feel like a lot more people are in the Army this morning than not, which is a change and a shift. JUK, Syrian, Adam Reynolds, Crazy Paul, and Jorge, thank you all for being in Tom's Army for over 6 months with the XP Predictor. Good morning to you all in Syrian. And Jorge, thank you for being very trusted mods. Greatly appreciated. Louisville, good morning. I know I said hi to you, but thanks again for being in Tom's Army for over 2 years. No, I didn't say hi to you, but thanks for being in Tom's Army for over 2 years with the XP 589 Moon badge. Good morning, friend. Let's see. Easy, good morning. Mark Powell, welcome in. Good to see you in here, friend. U5 says the prophecy will be fulfilled. Chaos before a great change is a universal rule. I absolutely agree with that, and I think it lines up perfectly to help us transcend into quantitative easing, rate cuts, and also big time money printing. Big time. Let's see. Jennifer Kupiak, welcome in. I hope the animals have been safe. It's been quite wicked weather around here the last couple of days. Some storms and such. But now tomorrow it's going to be 98, and Monday's supposed to be between 98 and 100. So we will be getting into some very interesting times here the next 48 hours. Very hot. Had to pick up a lot of tree damage. Fortunately, none of my garden was wrecked, but, you know, still tree damage nonetheless. Just had to cut some stuff off. Nothing major. Papa Wheelie, good morning. Thanks for being in Tom's Army for over 6 months with the XP Predictor, along with 1970 legend, the Buckeyes in the house, the defending national champion. Big Ten's doing pretty good the last couple of years. So welcome in, friend. I hope you're enjoying that glorious championship. as I did in 23 for Michigan. Strider welcoming going lower than $1. It is possible. Right now, I wouldn't say that that's the most likely objective, at least before, even if we had a bigger drop, to go down to $1.50, ranging, extending down to $1.34. We would still have to have some rebound. We'd back test. If we went to $1.50, I think you might have an immediate back test of $1.82 just to see if we could come back and hold that as like an inverse shoulder, head, shoulder kind of thing. Otherwise, if we got a rejection in those areas, we could very well find ourselves sitting, you know, at the extension down to $1.34. And the reason why I say that extension down is because this is my chart, nobody else's, obviously. Some will say, well, Tom, that's not the way it works with distribution. This is the way it works from my understanding, the way that I see things. So the demand is the upper zone, and until we get the proper demand, we can't get into discovery. So we'll have to have demand over the top. Distribution, to me, you're either distributing from buyers to sellers. So when you come into that box, you either have enough buyers to push you into demand to try to push you into newfound discovery, even though people would have it flipped. But I'm looking at this a little bit differently because I'm looking at the wick off and this simultaneously. So to me, distribution is either going to keep us afloat or it's going to send us back into the bearish depths. And then the demand zone's either going to have enough people that still want demand for XRP to where it comes all the way up there. It hasn't happened. And each of the 3 previous occasions up here, or no, it's only been one. This is the second one. But in both occasions so far, there hasn't been any buyers sitting up here to even hold us in the zone for any length of time. You know, and in distribution, the first 2 times around, we just came right back through. Now, we did have a slingshot up initially, but when it came back down, it never had any steam to come back. So the 3rd time was the differential here, but I still think it doesn't feel right. There's not enough volume. And I just think understanding our basic fundamentals of trading and charting and things like that, I think that it's telling us that we've got a big problem here. We've got a big problem. In the weekly, we can see how this volume is just continuously coming down. Even when the most alarming thing to me was when we came down to $1.62. For one, we didn't come down to the fair value gap, which was kind of a slap in the face and kind of said to us like, hey, this isn't ready. We also know we've got a head, a left shoulder, head, right shoulder that is very well defined and formed, in my opinion. You could put it here, but I wanted to escalate it down to here. It's probably too hard to see with all of this. Just get rid of this. I'm just going to get rid of the noise. The hell with the noise. Now that you guys can see exactly how this is starting to transcend, I'll just... So what I'm looking at here, because we took the steps down, is that, yes, we have a left shoulder here, a head, but I think we kind of have an extended right shoulder there, where it took the elevator up, took the stairs down to form this little shoulder, which started to form a descending formation, which almost looks like a big pennant flag, or bull flag, however you want to look at it. But the problem is it's not being corroborated with volume, and it's telling us that we're probably we've overstayed our welcome at this side of town. And the fact that we've rode on the outside of this for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 weeks, and there hasn't been a breakout, and no volume is starting to come in, but you can see slightly more volume on the sell side is starting to tick up. We need some volume. Like the bottom line is we need some positive volume coming in to avoid this next chapter of the downside. If we get volume and it stays above 201, even down to $1.98, you could have a big break up. We're back testing, and it's not very often that I would say there's an 85% chance to break down, even when it's on the back testing side at about 70% of the move. That's simply because we're not being corroborated with volume, and it makes me think differently. But if we get any kind of volume, you know, it can change our opinion. But so far, we've been on point. Bitcoin's come down from 100 and... What's it come down to? All the way since here, and we've been... Our understanding is that we're in a rising wedge. You know, at bigger form, you can start saying it's something different. But I think we're in a rising wedge. And we've been looking at it appropriately. Yeah, some can say the small part of that right side is kind of a pennant. Call it whatever you want, but the overall thing looks like a rising wedge. From 112,000, it's just toppled down like we thought maybe it would. This was kind of a short-term wedge that was formed, and I don't even want to keep all of this because that's just going to make it look like there's more chances than there are. But if you take it away from a small wedge to a larger wedge, it's imitating itself to me. And like you can say it's more like this, obviously, because it was off-centered, because we didn't have the evidence. But I was just pushing it out into the future. Like if this is a rising wedge, it could look like that to imitate the other side. And if it comes through that, I mean, I don't really see how it's going to hold from not coming down to 91,800 in Bitcoin. And then ultimately, if it broke that down, I mean, that's a problem. That would be a big problem if it breaks that down. I'm not even going to keep this up because it's irrelevant. It would be a problem because it would come all the way down to 61,000. And it has never back tested the cup and handle breakout, which is something that I've been concerned about for quite some time. But I still think there's a chance it could hold 91,800. It's just when you start looking at it from a wedge perspective, and it's not in a wider rising wedge right now. I'm just saying if it comes down here, it automatically will form what looks like a rising wedge. So this is kind of just doing a prediction into the future. And this is what I do all the time. I'll put it out here, and then it takes months, maybe even years to play out. But it plays out because the pattern's appropriate. So it's going to stay within the pattern. And if it's a trading bot and algorithm, it's got no choice but to print it within the setup. Now, sometimes you do get little overruns or overdumps, and then it just quickly eats itself back up. But that's just because of volatility from the retail traders. More so than institution because you get the overzealous move. Let's see. Areli, good morning. Big Dog, welcome in, and thanks for being in Tom's Army for your second month with the Dusty's Outhouse Crypto News. Greatly appreciated. CJ2 Pilot, good morning. You received a notice. Excellent. I'm appreciative of the fact that you actually got one this morning. Thanks for being in Tom's Army for over 1 year with the I Told You So badge. John Boogathorpe says, hi, Tom. Thanks for your continued dedication. That'll always be here. You are welcome, John, but that's something you'll never have to worry about. I'm very dedicated to what I believe in, and I like to stay on top of things. So this morning I woke up, showered and stuff, cut the grass, did what I had to do, fixed a few of the fences that got damaged, and now we're here. Jennifer Kupiak, welcome in, and I hope, like I was saying before, that the animals are doing good. I know we've had a lot of wild weather across, at least on the eastern part of this country, my time zone. Walked before the sun came out. Good, Siren. What a way. It's a good time. It's a good time in the morning, especially when it's not so busy. Paranomia, welcome in. Let's see, who else did I miss? I think that's everybody. Jesse, good morning, and thanks for being here on this happy Saturday. Don't forget to give thanks to your Lord and Savior Jesus Christ on this most holy of days. Yeshua, Yahweh. Is Quant providing us with some insight of what the market is going to do? That's what I was saying in the Telegram earlier, that I feel like Quant is definitely telling us it's becoming the early sign. But remember, this was kind of like in its own rising wedge that we were talking about, but this broke out, but it never back tested, so that gave you a likely entry target at $78 if it holds. We're going to get opportunities that we haven't seen since 2023. And what I mean by that is because we're going to have a parabolic dump, it looks like, that brings us from a much different layer. And it has to play out appropriately. If it doesn't, obviously this would be invalidated. But if we get these bigger drops that look like we're going to get, that would account for a 70 to 80% overall drop from the top of the bull market on most things. And that would be the first opportunity you've had of a substantial drop like that since 2023. Like even XRP, it wouldn't be going to 70 like some of them. But let's say it gets to the $1.34 extension zone. That's 60%. So you could be getting as much of a 60% correction as low as about a 55% or 56%. So this would be the first time on XRP in a very long time after a bull market cycle that you could find yourself coming down by better than 50, 60% and having a parabolic spike after, just even if it's not meant to go to new heights, just to back test such an overzealous drop. This has been very, in my opinion, very predictable. There was just way too much momentum and noise when we were at 340 and 330. We had a lot of discussions about all these new stations on TikTok are starting on Twitter and social media or X, YouTube. All these people, all of a sudden, it was like the local shoe shiner is telling us when to buy things. And once the shoe shiner, as they said back long time ago, when the shoe shiner tells me what I need to buy, it's time to sell. That's what happened to me. The guy at the gas station that I really like, up at the corner where I always walk up to, nice guy. And I kept telling him about Bitcoin and the altcoins. I even wrote him a diagram of when to buy it, where to buy it. I had like 18,000 subscribers at the time, and he never listened. And then all of a sudden I went in there one day, late 24, right around Christmas time, a couple weeks before, and he starts saying, hey, it's time. Have you been paying attention to Bitcoin? I'm buying Bitcoin. And then in January, he kept saying, I'm like, what the hell? You didn't listen to me for 2 years when it was at X amount, and now it's, 4 or 5x everything, and now all of a sudden it's time to buy. Bitcoin's over 100,000. What the hell are you talking about? And it was just that big media push. So now the guy at the gas station's telling me what I needed to buy, and I'm like, well, I hate to break it to everybody, but not just the charts that we're seeing, not the fact that we're overbought, and we're in a lot of, and we're very, very much in greed, heavy greed at that, almost as high as it could have went. I had to make an educated decision, and I'm glad I did. But the more well-rounded, educated thought will be, where's the next buy zone? Like, to me, you can't buy it when it's got all this nonsense around it. Not just XRP, because if you didn't buy it at $1.62, I don't think it's warranted to buy it at $2.11. And that's just my opinion. Like, you would have to convince yourself, why aren't you buying it at $1.62, but you're going to buy it at $2.11? That's always my argument. If I watch something go down so far and then it comes back up and it's railing, why would I buy it here if I wasn't willing to buy it at $1.50? Or why am I buying it at $1.50 if I wasn't willing to buy it at $50? And if I was buying it at $50, but I wasn't willing to, and that's the everlasting game you have to play with yourself. Sometimes it's a simple thing. Well, I don't want to buy it at X amount because I'm waiting for validation at Y. And then I'll buy it when Z hits. But in this point, XRP's up. I mean, even from 2024 low, XRP is legitimately up from 38 cents. I mean, we are way up here still. So the only thing that can really happen in a risk asset when you run this much, and look at every single thing that you've seen run, even Axel. I remember the community got all excited, a few people. I said, listen, everybody, this is a bear market. I don't care that it's went up 80% in a quick amount of time. And I even drew this out, what I thought could happen, and it's starting to ride all the way down what's starting to happen, and it's like, it's only because it's a bear market. These are bear market. It didn't pop out exactly where I thought. It popped out a little later, but it's a bear market. So everything that rises is always going to fall even farther, most likely. And then this just creates, see this big 75, 80% move by Axelar? What it ended up doing is creating a bigger base. And now if it does drop this next layer, you basically invalidated the 50%. This has been a big retracement so far. That's a huge, you're talking about it's already given, it's down 37% from the top. Remember, it started, before this candle broke off, we were at 32 cents. You're telling me it's already back to just under 36 or right at 36? So that's why I say when you see these big bounces in bear markets, there's nothing wrong with selling it, because more than likely it's just going to retrace back under the zone because we're in a bear market. Just like DAG did the same thing yesterday. It had a nice little move. But now all of a sudden today, everything it gained yesterday, even with this small push up, it's now lower. And I hope Shane's been paying attention to this, because I drew out for him that 2.7 cents would be the first area you could look. But we have to make sure that these don't break down completely. We're starting to get into that very dicey area of pattern reset talk. Now, XRP, like I've said from the beginning, is the exception to the rule, because it's done, even if you don't want to acknowledge it, it's done remarkable in this market. Remarkable. Besides Bitcoin, it's the only one really that's doing as well as it is. Some will say Solana. I don't trust Solana, so, to me, Solana is nothing more than an Ethereum-like security. So, can't have your cake and eat it too. They're both securities. So they both have ETFs and ETPs, so they can say whatever they want, but they have products and funds, so that makes them a security by just by definition. That's the gray area XRP is going to get into if they start doing XRP, exchange traded products, which they technically do, just not on the. But you guys will go deeper. You can go down the rabbit hole. So basically, I've just been trying to stay even keel, and I'm trying to make sure everybody can see the direction that I think it's going to go. Now, here, well, let the market do what it's going to do right now. Bitcoin's dropped, 300 points since we started. Nothing major. Remember, we have the CME close from Friday, so it should stay around the same area to not create any bigger gaps. If it has a, let's just put it this way. If you see Bitcoin drop to like 100K over the weekend and you're shorting this market, most likely you're going to have to get rid of that short unless you're willing to let it come back up when the the Chicago Mercantile Exchange opens back up, which is the futures market, because any kind of gap can be created here over the weekend as well. It would be a futures gap. No different than what we're looking at from the CME point of view, at 91,800 and some change. There. Bitcoin got about 70 bucks there. There you go. But here's the entities that hold Bitcoin. So I don't know how many of you are familiar with the Bitcoin list or the holdings, but I'm very thankful that Hold 15 Capital put this out. And I happened to come across it. What odds do you place on a rebound from $1.82 to $1.98? If we come down there 30%, if not less. I don't give it a lot of stock at all, to be honest with you. With that fair value gap sitting there and the fact we couldn't hold the bounce to 265, 252, 242, 234, 229, then all the way down to 219 and 206 and 202 and 198. And I don't hold any stock. I think it's less than 30% if I'm being honest, John. Bugathorpe, and thanks for being in Tom's Army for over 1 year with the I Told You So badge. If it goes down to $1.50 or $1.38, one of those two is going to have a pretty profound either V-shaped recovery or a massive W reversal pretty quickly, though. I don't think it would take much time, but more than likely on a drop like that, you see V-shaped recoveries for whatever reason because it creates a head. But then you have to be careful because it could create a second extension down to create a wider inverse head. I don't know, though. I won't know until we start to make the drop. I don't know what kind of setup it's going to make. So for me to say it from now to you and be like, hey, this is what's going to happen and this is how it would reverse, it's all nonsense. I can give you my most educated opinion, but until I see the structure that's bringing the whole house down, it's going to be hard to give you a precise answer there. But that should be good enough, though. It'll keep you in line with what I think should happen, without going overzealous. But let's go over this chart too. I'm glad I was just reading through some of the comments. Love seeing everybody in here. Strategy, MicroStrategy has 592,100 Bitcoin. Remember, this is as of June 16th. So, that's 5 days ago now. We got Marathon Digital and now I'm not going to go through all of them, but what I want you to do, and we're going to do this together, is, well, we don't even have to do it together. But look, MicroStrategy with 592,000, Marathon Digital with 49,179. Then you've got 21 with 37,000, Riot Platform with 19,000 plus, Clean Spark with 12,000 plus. Tesla with over, these are a lot of these companies are giving away common stock to buy these Bitcoin. Does that sound like a real solid plan? That'd be like you taking out credit cards to buy gold. If you want to put it in perspective, these people are giving out common stocks, which is basically putting out a credit line in addition to what they already have on their stock. It'd be the equivalent of us buying gold and silver with our credit card and not even having any money. It doesn't make any sense. Because now your interest is probably going to appreciate faster than the price of gold and silver. And then you start going down a little bit farther. You got Hut 8, Meta Planet, both around 10,000. Then at number 10, you got Coinbase with 9,267 Bitcoin. GameStop has 4,700 Bitcoin. So let me ask you all a question with GameStop. When they were short squeezing everybody and liquidating you, what do you think they were doing with your money that ended up in their pockets out of liquidation? They were buying Bitcoin. Block Squares bought 8,500 Bitcoin. Next Technologies. Now you start going down a little bit farther and you see Cypher Mining has almost 1,000 Bitcoin. Few technology companies. The Bitcoin Depot has 100 Bitcoin. Some smaller places have small like holding companies and things like that. If I was you, any company that holds Bitcoin on their balance sheet, I wouldn't buy their shit. I wouldn't buy their stock. I wouldn't buy their product. I wouldn't buy their anything. You know, especially if it's something big, like especially like a Tesla. Like, no, thank you. Because they're basically mortgaging your future for their investment on Bitcoin, which to me is just a major Ponzi scheme. Because what I think is going on behind the scenes is I think these companies get a deal from the U.S. government and they say, if you invest in Bitcoin, we'll let you have this X amount for write-off purposes. And I know this is true because MicroStrategies and a few others have accidentally let it slip that they're able to write off certain X, Y, and Z. And they always say losses, but the losses they're talking about account to millions of dollars, as where we're only able to write off 3,500 in any calendar year and losses. You can lose billions, but you can't write it off past 3,500 as a normal slew. But if you lose millions, you get, or if you make millions, you get taxed not just $3,500 worth, you get taxed on the whole damn allotment. So they have some back end deals with the government. I guarantee it. They have to. There's no other reason to do this. Especially to mortgage your whole company on something that's clearly in a, I mean, you guys know Ponzi schemes. It takes larger and larger investments to keep the Ponzi going. And retail can't afford this anymore. Maybe at 5,500, 330 cents. But at 103,000, 104, the retail can't afford it anymore. You got to be honest with yourself. So you're going to buy a fraction of a Bitcoin. Big freaking deal. You might as well buy something else that's not fully intact already. That's why I say, yeah, XRP's already moved. And maybe you missed that opportunity, but there's so many others. So many others. But yeah, I mean, look at all of those. That pretty much puts it in perspective of corporations that are holding. And it's not just in the USA, but look how much of the USA by virtue owns Bitcoin just in this setting. You got a lot of Bitcoin being held by entities that are probably run by the government anyhow, or subsidized by our federal government. So, but it puts it in perspective when you start to look at a list like this. I know it does for me. I won't keep this on for too long because most people will leave. They're like, oh, who cares about Bitcoin? I care because I want to know what's going on. Trading with J Ride, thanks for the $10 donation and also being in Tom's Army for over 3 years with the XRP Diamond Hands badge. Says, can you go over B2 Gold? Right now I can. B2 Gold ended the week down 1.62% or down 6 cents. Still sitting very healthy at $3.62. I think it's either doing one of two things. We haven't finished this technical move on this breakout, and it already back tested it, so we don't have to worry about that. With a beautiful V-shaped recovery, almost like inverse right or head and shoulders are on the breakout. Inverse right shoulder on the breakout. But it could be back testing 346. It's actually a little bit higher, though. We got to make sure it's right. 352, it could back test. That was the old resistance. It could back test it as a support. Or it could just be building a little flag. Nice V-shaped breakout. Could back test that little V at the end. And then the next layer, we're going to get over and try to hold this 384, which actually hit a perfect resistance. And then once you bounce on that, you really don't have a lot. You've got these micro levels, but it's really a straight shot almost to $5. And once that happens, it's going to really start pricing people out of what we're trying to plan here. It's starting to price people out, starting to come up here. It's not at 240 anymore, or 220, or 270. If it starts pushing these bounds, it's going to be interesting. At some point here, they're going to start pulling more gold out of the ground. They've got a lot of these mining companies have a lot of gold sitting in the ground and silver, and they chose not to pull it out last year or this first half of the year because they thought price appreciation was going to happen, and they were absolutely correct. So instead of pulling it out of the ground at 2,000, now it's at well over 35. What is it at right now? Over 33.71. So that's a big difference. So the cheapest way to get the gold right now is the mining stocks. And right now, B2 Gold, not only because it's traditionally one of the higher paying, dividend paying in mining stocks, But the fact that it's had its highest rate of production in silver, outproducing its production that it's ever had, while silver looks like it's going to go on a parabolic spike, makes it a very, very wise investment if you find the right areas. You know, obviously they had the back test, which would have been a beautiful spot here, which some people bought it too, where we kept buying more when it made these drops down. But 293 would have been a beautiful spot right there. I know a few of you in the audience bought it exactly there. So yeah, that's what we're looking at to start the week, J-Ride. I would say we have to see how the futures market comes online. You could have a small head and shoulders there, and if you do, you would either reset at 352. I don't think you're coming all the way back down below $3 anymore. I think you did create what almost looks like a jank bull flag as well here. I'm not sure yet, because it could even be a pennant flag with the way it did it. It hasn't made up its mind yet. Because you got that. Or it could be a rising. See, that's where it's difficult, because I don't know yet, because we haven't given it the time for Monday. It's too small of a time frame just to see, but it just looks like it's consolidating in its normal fashion right now. So I would look for the 352 if it starts to come down any farther, because that seems to be the general area that I would, me personally, I'd be targeting. If the 200-day gives, or the 20-day gives away in the 4 hourly. But it looks like it's just correcting right now. It would make sense for it to come back and fill that little gap area. We don't want to leave any gaps on the way up. And right now, to me, between 348 and 352 is a profound gap. So it needs to come down there and hit. So that's how I would be looking at it, J-Ride. I hope that helps. And I appreciate the question, because I certainly love mining stocks. For all of you who have been a part of this for 36 minutes as you leave, make sure to hit that like button if you wouldn't mind. We have 64 likes and 116 people watching. Basically 50%. So I would love to see more people hit the like button. I'm not going to harp on it, but if you find this content useful, or if you find knowledge, do the due diligence and hit the like button so you can help expand my audience base as well, and expand how far I can push this content. It's simple. With an algorithm and the way AI is these days, you don't hit the like button, they don't push the content. The more of you hit the like button, the more it gets pushed. It's that simple. It's an illusion. Thank you for the $5 donation, and also being in Tom's Army for over 6 months with the XRP Predictor. Says if the candle doesn't happen during the week and look like the March 3rd candle, you're spot on about the rest of the summer. You're right about that, unfortunately. That's why I keep saying we've got one chance here to reverse this. We really do. We've got one chance to avoid this. It's exactly what you said. You're absolutely right. Because if it does play out like it did in early March, it's going to be a problem. And you guys seen how that ended up playing out. Not so swell. And then it took a while for recovery. But then it just looks like we're back testing the drops. And that's where it gets dangerous. Ethereum's another one. It's basically the gatekeeper of this whole thing. We've been spot on with Bitcoin. Not just me, but the community. When I say we, I'm speaking community. I think some people misrepresent or misinterpret what I'm saying, because they're not part of the community for any length of time. But I always say we. I don't say me. I don't say I say we. I like to say we. It's a concerted effort. Look how many people are here. We have 110 plus people here, even on a Saturday morning when the market looks like hell. That golden cross is on the verge of being invalidated in the daily. I still think with Ethereum, its first sign of even trying to hold something would be around this area to create an inverse right shoulder. They're at 2190 or 2000 area. I'm not guaranteeing anything that's going to hold, though, because I could see this turn into another head and shoulders real quick. The fact we're below that rising wedge and it plays out so perfectly. Like, I haven't changed that setup in, 6 months? When we were like, oh man, when we were about to go up to 4,000, we're like, this is forming a rising wedge. And we're like, if this happens, this is what we can expect, and it could come down to 496 or worse. But there's a few things that can happen, and we've articulated every single action zone. And right now, it looks like a 3-peak hit, failed inverse pattern so far. Big reversal in the weekly that's about as bad as you could possibly get. After what teased almost like an inverted hammer candle, with 1 day and 9 hours left, this is a bona fide, what looks like a reversal candle, and it doesn't look great. It's trying to give one last chance not to put a death cross here in the daily. The 20s cross the 50 and the 100. It's trying to cross the 200. And this is basically, you see it in the daily. I mean, the weekly is trying to do that. But in the daily, you can see how we came up. And instead of going over on the golden cross, now we're rejecting at the 200-day, which could lead to the optics because we have a death cross looming in the weekly while we had a simultaneous golden cross in the daily. That seems to be waning now. But what ends up happening is the weekly is going to play out more than likely. Weekly is a higher time frame, so you give more credibility to the higher time frame. So don't worry, everybody. I know it's been 40 minutes. Some of you are starting to leave. We'll end this soon. But I go through the due diligence. I know a lot of people like XRP, and they'll leave once I stop talking about it. I get it. That's about 30% of the viewing audience in the lives. The moment I stop talking about XRP, just leaves. But there's so much information. Today, about 25% left, right when I stopped talking about XRP, which is a good way to look at it from an analytical standpoint. But honestly, like, we got to bounce around because there's so many different things we cover. So the XRP market cap, it's below that Mendoza line as well. That 129.29 billion is everything. We're back testing it right now. But I'm not convinced here because I think it might have had a pre-artificial breakout. And the only reason I base it on that is look at the volume. Broke out, and then after it came down here to push back up, the volume kept crashing on the push up. That is not a great sign. So anything void of getting some significant volume in, we're going to have a fate of exactly what we've been talking about. And, you know, at least we've been on top of it. That big pattern, though, is anything but broken. It just, I feel like we went up, we didn't have enough support, we need to come back down into distribution in my own profound distribution area because I believe we need more of a base. I don't think we have the appropriate base, and it's being compounded by the lack of volume, and it's being able to validate what we're seeing. We don't have a base right now. The base has exited stage left, which is what we expected, right at all-time highs because you had people trapped in there since 2017. So when you've had 7 years of trap and then they finally get out scot-free and become whole, that's what happens. You should expect these big corrections. So I've got it lined up in a lot of different ways. So we'll just have to see which way it plays out. You know, nobody can predict exactly what's going to happen. If we can get some volume in, it could certainly change our mindset. But anything short of volume is going to continue to allow Bitcoin to go parabolic in the market cap. Bitcoin's price is dropping, but yeah, look what's happening. This was our fear. It's exactly why I drew this out at 72%. Because even if Bitcoin and altcoins were dumping, I was under the illusion that you could see a 60 or 70,000 Bitcoin again, with the percentage being up at 72% because altcoins dumped so hard in comparison to Bitcoin on this next chapter. Like, that's why I have it drawn out like that, if anybody's wondering. FYI. So that's why I show things like that. And it looks like that's what's happening, and that's scary. That would mean 72% of all money's in Bitcoin out of crypto. 72%, I mean, that would be a lot. That's a lot. We should just chop here this weekend. We should chop. That weekly, though, looks horrendous. That's a weekly reversal. And we need volume. Like, that's all I'm going to say. We need some volume here in the next 33 hours. Anything short of volume, next week could get ugly. Sorry, I mean, for most of you, you're like, what do you mean next week? It's been ugly for 6 months. Yeah, but when I say ugly, we haven't had the catastrophic arm drop yet. Because if this is an arm, it's going to get real ugly. It's going to basically give you exactly what you've already seen and double it as far as losses. So, you know, it's a very weird moment to be in. I would kind of sit here over the weekend and just, if you're in something, let it play, I suppose. You know, the way you want, whether short or long, but I would look at this from the short perspective until it proves us wrong. You know, make this market prove that it is not going short right now. Because it certainly looks like that's the area we're going. KJB says that's why you set up an institutional trading account. Easier said than done if you're not an institution, my friend. There's certain parameters that need to be met. You can't just say you're a business without having the proper business. Otherwise, the government comes a calling and they say you're committing fraud. Adam Carrillo, welcome in. Good morning to you. Anybody can do it, and anybody can also be locked behind bars for fraud, my friend. I'm not arguing with you. I'm just saying that's the truth. Tom, what's the difference in drawing my trend lines? All the wicks are at the candle body. I would say if you're only doing the candle body, you'll see me do kind of like a 3D illustration or a Inception style chart where I have it measuring from the wicks and measuring from the body. You want to measure the wicks because now when you start to... Here, let me see if I can find an example real quick. So, let's see if I have something drawn. And something I'll have it drawn out. I just don't know what chart I'm going to... will be relevant. Okay, so here. So, bodies with XDC and then the wicks over the top. The reason why you would draw the wick on top instead of just on the bodies here, even though it broke out, it never got validation by breaking over the wick. So those wicks are telling you that's resistance over the top or a lot of sell pressure. So you can basically line up a sell wall where the wicks are hitting at the top, especially if price is depreciating. Or conversely, you can set up a wall of sellers where the wicks are at lower if you're starting to break up. So every time you get a wick down, that's where you would buy. So you measure it out by wick because even if you're at the body, the wick is telling the story. The wick tells the whole story, especially the higher time frames. Can't just go by. And most of the time, the wicks are just body in the smaller time frames. But you have to take the wicks at full value because that's actually where the pattern was revalidating. See this? On XDC, the wick brought us all the way down here, and it also actually helped us start the pattern. If we only went by the body, you would have an uptrend started from here to here, and it would just be completely out of whack. So you have to put full stock into the wicks because that's where the over-the-top, overzealous sell happened or buy that could switch the market, you know, but it also can be a foretelling of what's to come. Like you have a wick down, it eats it back up right away, but look how we chopped all the way back down. So the wicks tell the story, the body just fills it in. But the wick actually tells the story, in my opinion. A lot of people overlook the wick. That's a great question. It's a great question. Hope that helped. Trigger warning says, was thinking about getting some H-bar today, but I'm thinking it's going to drop down to around 11. It's tricky to buy right now. I mean, I can understand why. XCN's up 10%. MXC's up 7%. H-bar's at 14.3 cents. It's very tricky to buy here because to me it's on a bear flag. If that plays out, it brings it somewhere around 11 to 12 cents. It's on the back side of this rejection area, and this is a perfect example here of why it would be dangerous to buy on this side, because if this drop breaks, it's telling you it's bearish side right now. And if it breaks, at least at the minimum, and this should be higher up, the way I have this, because it should be measured from about right there. So it should hit, that was the problem. So it should hit somewhere around here. You know, maybe 11 to 12.5 cents. So yeah, it is dangerous because you could find yourself down 15% in the blink of the eye, even if you're technically right about it being a good zone. So I like to wait for that further tap of where these are supposed to go. You know, I understand XCN's up 10%, good for it. You know, I understand MXC after falling off by like 80% is up. But this, remember, it had to rise up to the 200-day, overzealous drop. And now we'll see if it can trickle up. If XCN comes up, that's a little inverse pattern. It's come up once to the 200-day, came back down, rejected twice at the 200-day. So we'll just see how it plays out. You know, something can be the exception to the rule. We're just trying to find it right now. So, but I'll keep everybody updated. Julie's going to be leaving, so I got to log off here in a minute. Julie's going to be leaving. I'm just getting through these last couple of comments, and then I got to go. Joseph Euler, thanks for reading Tom's number 3+ months with the XRP Meteor, and also the $10 donation. Says, can we have a take a look at ZBEC? Thank you for all the info, Tom. You are welcome. And yeah, ZBEC, we are sitting down 2.15%, and it's pretty ugly. I wouldn't say that's exactly the way I would look at this right now because we're getting further evidence. I just kind of had to base it off of nothing before. I would say something like this, but then that's from the body perspective. You could look at it, if you take the wick top, and this is what I'm saying, it slightly changes a pattern. You see, if you take it from the wick, it'll slightly change that pattern, and I think that's more honest about what's happening. But yeah, ZBAC, I still think that first one is 00338. And then I think there's a looming gap at 0021 potentially there. But then again, you could say it broke up, but see, it never technically came all the way back down. I don't know, it's tough. So either 338 was the first level. As you know, I said I'm not entertaining the thought of anything. I'll let you know if I do anything. But 00338 is definitely going to have to play down to at minimum before we can make some kind of decision. But I think it's looking for mostly a reset. Like, that's a head and shoulders in disguise, and it should come back down there to reset, just like it came back down to 0014 to reset after a push up to 00338. But now it could hold 00338 because that was the old resistance, remember? So that's why I said that's the first area that we should be able to back test. Nick corroborates that as well. He talks about it in the Telegram. So I think that's an area to look at. So thank you, everybody. I appreciate you. I'm gonna go. I gotta go do some stuff. Julie's gonna be gone for 3 hours. Michaela graduated high school and they're going to do some pictures. And I'm here with young Scarlett and little Tommy 3, T3, Thomas Speaker the third. So we'll have our own little day here, but I'm gonna be pretty busy the next few hours. Did we close on a hammer candle for Bitcoin? I mean, to me in the daily, it looks like we closed on a reversal candle. It's got a little top on there, but looks kind of dangerous, almost trap-esque. Now that we're below for 4 days in a row in the daily on closes, kind of feels like to me you'd come down and run at least to the 200-day. But I still think that 91,800 is the area to pay attention to. I can't help feeling that way. That is the CME gap. So that's what I'm looking at. Have a blessed morning, everybody. Have a blessed afternoon. Make sure you look in the video description below and or pinned comments of this very video. Get ahead with BITUNIX before it's time to buy. Lowest spot and leverage trading fees. There's so many ways to leverage trade and spot trade and swing trade and not have to put up with all the fees. Join the